In this video, you're going to learn about 5 Claude skills that you should be using in 2026. By the way, my name is Lewis and I make YouTube videos on content creation, specifically using Claude. So if you're a coach, consultant, freelancer, or just someone who wants to adapt Claude into their online presence, then this video is for you. So let's get started. All right, I want to just talk about the 5 skills that I'm going to be showing in this video. As you can see here, slides is going to be one of the big ones. Pretty cool that you can design slides from anywhere from like 3 to 5 slides all the way to the bigger ones to like 12 to 15. You basically have to come up with a really good prompt, or you can just do a basic prompt. It depends on what you want. The better the prompt, obviously the better the slides are going to be. I'm going to also be talking about email, caveman, research, and visual pages. So the slide deck builder is like you see here. You could use an example prompt like that. You can also add things into it. You can change the color of the font, the type of font. You obviously put the subject, how many slides you want, and then you get it back as an HTML file. So it's pretty neat, pretty useful for presentations, and pretty much whatever you can come up with, you could use it for. Next is going to be an email drafter. And right there, you can see there's 3 examples of what you could do with an email drafter. It's going to depend on the prompt. Follow-up emails, cold reach, negotiation, and updates are just some of the things you can do. Next is caveman mode. Caveman mode is pretty good. There's actually an ultra mode for caveman mode, and it just helps save tokens, when you're running through sessions, with Claude. Especially if you're just on the regular pro plan, it's $20 a month. If you're doing like coding and things like that, you can run through them pretty quickly within a 5-hour session, and then you have to wait. So what you would do is you would just hit /caveman, I'll show that later on. And then you can turn on ultra mode, which, it's even better. Next one is research. You can obviously do, whatever kind of research you want to do. Something that you used to do on Google by hand. You can just type in a prompt and you can have the skill use, the research mode, and it'll research basically about whatever you want it to, and it'll pull the information from the web. And it'll create a nice report for you, and you can look over it, and then you can make changes as needed. Another good one is Visual Page Builder for doing simple websites like I showed in one of my previous videos. You can build HTML sites. As you see here, you could use landing pages. You can do concept explainers, and there's a whole ton of things. You could also come up with a prompt to ask Claude what type of pages you can build with Visual Page Builder. So something that could be really useful. So as you can see, you basically only have to type in / and then the skill name, and then it'll invoke the skill. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and go into Claude, and I'm going to show you how to use each skill, and just as an example for each one, what you could actually do with it. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show the caveman skill. I'm going to show the before and after. And what it does is it uses a lot less until, it's about a 5-hour window, and then the higher the plan you get, obviously, the more usage you get. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in just this simple prompt, and I'm going to send it off as a regular use. And then what I'll do is after this is done, I'm going to go ahead and do another task, but I'll do it in caveman mode first. So you can see this is the, this is what it gave me. And it's a pretty good answer. It's decent for just such a basic prompt. So now I'll do new, and I'll type in caveman, and I'll click caveman mode. And there's different settings within caveman mode. There's like a light mode and ultra mode, but I'll just leave it as this for now. And I'll send it off. And what it'll do is it'll set it up into that mode, and then I can go ahead and put in the prompt that I want to use. So once it sets the mode, then I'll go ahead and hit the prompt, and you'll see the output will be less, so it'll be a lot less usage. Caveman mode on. I'll go ahead and post the same exact prompt and send that off, and we will see what it does. So time block. So you can see the difference here in the response is a lot less. It's even more, it's more than that as far as like the response. It's more condensed if you put it into ultra mode. So you'll see, if you wanted to type it in, you could try it on your own. So you can see right here I'm at 29% usage already. I'll go to the caveman, and this is how short the answer was that it gave me. You can see obviously it's a lot shorter. So what I did was I went to a site called Token Calculator. So this was the first one. It gave me the longer response here. So that's 191 tokens, and it shows you, the characters. This is how many tokens were used. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to copy the other. I'll copy this and see what it actually gives me in terms of how many tokens was used. 64. So you can see a lot less right here. It shows way less usage if you use that mode. It's not everybody uses it. Some people do, some people don't. Some people don't know about it. So I would say if you want to save on tokens, try to use this. Depending on what you're going to do. If you're coding, I'm not sure, how much you would actually use it. But for like everyday stuff, you could probably save a pretty decent amount of tokens if you just put in, tried caveman mode at least, and then you can test out on your own the different modes that it has. So next up will be another skill. All right, the next one I'm going to do is the email skill here. And what I'll do is I'll just type in /email and hit space. And I'm going to put in a small prompt, draft a brief professional email to my manager, letting them know that the project is on track for Friday's deadline. But I am still waiting on the final budget approval from the finance team before I can submit it. Keep the tone confident and collaborative. So I'll go ahead and send that off. And it's going to come up with a pretty good email that I could use. And of course, I can edit it, in any way that I want. And anybody could use this skill if you're using Claude Cowork. So there it is right there. Subject, project update, on track, hi. You put in the manager's name here. You fill it in. So you would just copy it. And then, of course, it gives you like a follow-up if you want to keep, going back and forth with it. So this seems like a pretty good one here. There's other ways of doing it too. You could also go into Claude and just type in, you can give it a role, expert email drafter, and then you'd hit, go underneath a couple lines and then just hit task : and then you would just type in your prompt, like draft me an email for, whatever it is. So I would say this is pretty good. It's a pretty decent skill to have in Claude. So I will move on to the next skill. All right, the next skill I'm going to use is the slide deck builder. So I'm going to call it up here. Going to just type in slide, and you can see it pop up. There's several that popped up behind it, which are also good skills: budget dashboard, theme factory. I'm going to do slide deck builder, and then I'm going to put in build me a slide deck for the following. And I'll paste in a prompt. It's about presenting for like a cold email service that you're trying to present to someone to show, a problem here about cold email and how you could, help them. So what I'll do is I'll leave it on Sonnet 4.6, go ahead and send that off. And once it's done, I'll give you a look at what it came up with. All right, so it finished, and this is what it came up with. I'm going to go ahead and click on it and open it. Doesn't look too bad here. You could change what you want to change. Again, this is an HTML file, so it's like what I was talking about before with the HTML sites. I mean, you just have to either tell it what you want it to change, or you could just type it in, just plan out what you want to change, and you can change like the font, the color. So it's pretty neat. It gives you all this information. So it went off of these, what I put in here. So you could come in and look at what you want to change, look at all what just for the heck of it, what I want to do is I want to change the color instead of orange. So I'm going to change the color, and I'll see what it comes up with. This is kind of neat here. We even put a button. You could change it and link it to something. You could tell it to put a link in there, and then you could paste in the link. Whatever. There's a million things you could do with Claude. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, I guess I'll just type it in, probably be easier. Please change, I'm going to tell it to please change the accent color to light blue instead of orange. And I'm going to send it off, and I'll see what it comes up with after that. And I also invoked caveman mode to save some tokens. So it's finished. It finished actually pretty quick here. All I did was change the CSS. And there it is. There's the light blue. Looks a little bit better. I mean, you know, it depends on what color you like. Again, everything's editable. You can do show and folder if you wanted to, and you click show and folder. It popped up on my other screen. I'll scroll over, you know, and it shows right here, cold email slides.html. You can get it, you know, you can put it back in. You could change it, you know, do whatever you want. So pretty neat skill to use. I think it's pretty useful if you like to do presentations or if you just want to mess around with it and see what it can actually do. Alrighty, on to the next skill. So this tool right here is pretty interesting. The research tool. So you can see there's 4 different ones. First one is like synthesize user research into themes and insights. You could read right there all the stuff that it can do. When you have interview transcripts, that's what it's used for. Like if you have survey results, usability tests, notes, support tickets. This here is a quick research one. It's just researching any topic from multiple sources. It's probably the one I'm going to use. This is user research. Is when you want to plan, conduct, and synthesize user trigger with user research plan. And then the other one is synthesizer research. So this one brings in multiple sources. You can bring in like interviews, surveys, and structured insights, different things, and then it'll pull from all that, and it'll create a research report from that. So what I'll do is I'll do quick research, and I'm going to use this prompt. Write a 2-page research report on the economics of AI compute power. Look for real-world use case studies with concrete data rather than general white papers. So I'm going to go ahead and send that off, and I will be back once it is finished. So because I only asked for a 2-page report, this is what it came up with here. And by the way, these are the sources. It gives all the sources that it pulls from. It's pretty crazy stuff that it came up with here. People don't realize the compute power and the money that's involved in all this AI. Look at this, 600 to 700 billion will be spent just in 2026. And here's all the companies that they're talking about. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta. And this was from 2025. And as you can see, it talks about it right here about the math behind it. 6% year-over-year increase, $11.13 million per megawatt in 2026. Wow, this is a pretty big amounts of money being spent here. And also it mentions $78 million was the cloud rental pricing for GPT-4, and that's not even the newest model. So you can imagine the amount of money that goes into this, this AI compute power. So, and this is just a basic use of this tool. I mean, of course, you can go deeper with it. You can get a lot more out of it, depending on the prompt and depending upon the topic that you want to research. So the next will be the last one that I'll go into. It's the visual design builder skill. So the last one I'm going to show is the visual page builder. And I'm going to invoke it right here. So it's going to, you can see here, generate beautiful self-contained HTML pages that explain any concept visually. So you can do this in Claude Design. You can do it here. You could also do it in Claude Code. But obviously when you do coding, you're still using natural language for it, but you can generate way, deeper, way bigger, way better websites with that. But just to keep it simple, I'm going to use a simple prompt here that I have off screen, and it's going to be for like a habit tracker. Let me just copy it real quick. So it'll generate prompt to create a simple, interactive weekly habit tracker dashboard. Include checkable buttons for drink water, workout, and read 20 minutes for each day of the week, and a visual progress bar that fills up as I check things off. So I'm going to go ahead and send that off. And once it builds it out, I will come back and show you what it came up with. All right, as you can see, it's finished. And what it did was it gave a basic page, which doesn't look too bad. I mean, if you're into if you're a beginner, it's probably going to look pretty cool. And it's still pretty neat that you could do this. And also, just so you know, you can edit. Obviously, you can just tell it to change the font. You could tell it to add things to this. The deeper you'll go, the more more tokens it's gonna eat up. So you'll have to get into if you're gonna do something like really, really big, you'll probably want to do it in something like Claude Code or one of the other, coding tools. In that case, you would just download this HTML file and you would just upload it to it and tell it to change it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell it to add something in, and I'm going to tell it to change the background. So I'll go ahead and just, instead of typing it in, I'll just go ahead and say it. Hey, Claude, go ahead and add one more habit to this habit tracker. call the habit sleep for 8 hours, and also make the background a little bit lighter, make it to a dark blue. I'll go ahead and send that off. And once it's finished, I will show you the results of this. All right, it is finished, and let's go ahead and open it up. And as you can see, what it did was it added in this here, this sleep 8 hours, and it also made the background a little bit lighter. So what's cool about this is you can go through it all. It'll go all the way through, and then you can just hit reset week. You know, you can go here and click, make it go all the way, however far, and then when you hit reset week, it'll just go back. So what's cool about this is you can you can put this into your, you can put it on like a desktop or laptop, because it's just an HTML file, so it's static. It doesn't change. So that's why I was mentioning earlier, if you're trying to get it as something that's more, more robust, then obviously you're going to have to go into something like Claude Code or like some kind of a coding tool to add to this. But anyways, if you're interested in this and you're watching, this is more for like beginners, and that's the school community that I started is for beginners. Anybody's welcome to join it if you're interested in Claude. I aimed it at coaches and consultants and freelancers, but in the coming weeks, I'm going to be adding more to the group as time goes on and as people start to join. So if you're interested, the links will be down in the description. And what I'll also do is I'll link this habit tracker down in the description. It's just a simple HTML file, so it's going to be small. So with that, I will see you in the next one, and thank you for watching.